I want you to picture this for a second. It's a clear, full moon night more than 2,000 years ago. The Buddha is sitting with a group of monks, and in that quiet, a conversation starts. A conversation that's all about trying to unravel the very nature of who we think we are.
I mean, that's the ultimate question, isn't it? If someone asks, you might say your name, your job, what you like to do. But what we're going to explore tonight is a completely different kind of answer, one that kind of takes the question itself apart. And it's all based on a classic discourse called the Mahāpuṇṇamasutta.
So the story goes that one of the monks gets up, pays his respects, and basically asks the Buddha, okay, can you break it down for us? What are the fundamental building blocks of our experience? What are we actually clinging to when we build up this whole idea of a self?
And the term he uses is pancha upadana khandha. Now I know it sounds super complex, but it's actually an incredibly precise framework. Let's break it down. Pancha, that means 5. Khandha means something like an aggregate or a heap. And upadana, that means clinging, or you can even think of it as the fuel that keeps a fire going. So what we're talking about are the 5 heaps of experience that are basically fueled by our clinging.
Okay, so let's dive into what these 5 things actually are. The Buddha's answer is just a masterclass in analysis. He confirms the monk's question is the right one, and then he breaks down our entire perceived reality into 5 distinct, flowing processes.
What's so amazing about this slide is that it's a complete map of our subjective world. First, there's rupa, which is physical form. You know, your body, the chair you're sitting on, the whole material world. Then vedana, which is the raw feeling of any experience. Is it pleasant, unpleasant, or just kind of neutral? Next is sanya, and that's perception, the mind's habit of recognizing and slapping labels on everything. Then you have sankhara, which are our mental formations, all our choices, our intentions, our habits. And finally, there's vijnana, or consciousness. And this is so important. This isn't some permanent soul or self. It's just the basic function of awareness that knows the other 4 are happening.
And the Buddha is really clear here. These categories are absolutely vast. We're not just talking about what's happening this very second. No, they include every single form, every feeling, every thought you've ever had or ever will have. Whether it's in your own head or outside, whether it's huge or tiny, near or far, it is a total system.
But, just knowing the components isn't really enough. So the monk pushes things a little further with a really crucial question. What's the root of all this? Where does the problem of clinging actually start?
And the answer is so simple, but it's also incredibly profound. The root is chunda, which means desire, intention, that little impulse to want. See, the 5 aggregates themselves, they're just neutral processes happening. It's our desire for them to be a certain way, to give us lasting happiness, to stick around. That's what turns them into a source of attachment and ultimately stress.
This leads to another brilliant clarifying question from the monk. He asks, so is the problem the aggregates themselves, or is this clinging thing something totally separate from them? That is a really sharp distinction to make, right?
And the Buddhist answer here is so subtle and so profound. He says that the clinging is not the same as the aggregates, but it's not something completely separate either. Instead, the clinging is the desire and the passion that pops up in relation to them. It's kind of like the heat from a fire. The heat isn't the log itself, but you're never going to find the heat separate from the log, are you?
Okay, so let's get to the core psychological issue here. How does this interwoven desire, this clinging, create that powerful, persistent illusion of an I, of a me, of a mine?
The Buddha actually gives this whole phenomenon a name, Sakkaya Dishti. We often translate it as identity view. And what it is, it's that deep-seated gut-level feeling we all have, that somewhere inside this constant flow of body and feelings and thoughts, there's a permanent, unchanging self who's the owner and the controller of the whole show.
And this slide just brilliantly illustrates the difference. You see, the uninstructed person, someone who's caught up in this identity view, looks at their body and thinks, this is me, or I have this body. But the instructed person, the wise person, learns to see the body simply as form, just a process, without building a whole identity around it. And this exact same shift in perception applies to our feelings, our thoughts, all of the other aggregates.
So right about now, another monk has a thought that is probably what you're thinking too. It's like, wait a minute, if everything is not self, then who is doing anything? Who gets the results of an action? How can there be any moral responsibility at all? It's a very fair and logical question.
The Buddha, though, he knows this is a conceptual rabbit hole, so he doesn't answer it directly. Instead, he does something brilliant. He guides the monk back to what he can know for himself through direct experience. He asks a really simple question about the aggregates. Are they stable and lasting, or are they constantly changing?
Well, the monks immediately answer, of course they're impermanent. They're always changing. So the Buddha then leads them to the next logical conclusion. If something is always changing, if it's impermanent, it just can't provide lasting satisfaction, right? Trying to find stable, permanent happiness in something fundamentally unstable is, by its very nature, a source of stress, or what's called dukkha.
And this brings us to the pivotal knockout question of the entire conversation. The Buddha asks, okay, given that all these processes are impermanent and inherently stressful, is it really appropriate to look at any of them and say, this is mine, I am this is myself? And the answer, of course, is a huge, resounding no. And that powerful insight, that no, is what opens the door to the final part of this whole journey, the practical path to freedom, which comes from just seeing reality clearly, exactly as it is, without that distorting filter of I and mine.
So the method is all about wisely investigating every experience we have. For any of the 5 aggregates, we learn to see 3 things. Let's just take a simple feeling, like joy. First, we see the asada, the gratification, the pleasure it brings. It feels good. But we also have to clearly see the adinava, its inherent drawback, the fact that it's impermanent, it's going to fade. And by seeing both of those honestly, we can finally understand the nisarana, the true escape. And the escape isn't to stop feeling joy, but to release that desperate craving for it to last forever.
This whole investigation is about cultivating a core insight, a meditative reflection that's summarized in this one essential Pali phrase. This is the reflection you apply to everything you experience.
Which in English is, this is not mine. This I am not. This is not myself. It's such a direct and powerful tool for taking apart our mistaken identity in real time. And it's not some affirmation you're trying to force yourself to believe. It's a clear-eyed observation of how things actually are, from one moment to the next.
And what happens is, this clear seeing sets off a kind of natural chain reaction. Seeing the aggregates for what they are leads to nibbindati, a sense of disillusionment or turning away. This turning away then leads to viraji, or dispassion. That dispassion allows for vimukkhati, which is freedom. And once you're free, there is the direct knowledge of that freedom. You see? It's a natural psychological process, not some big leap of faith.
And the power of this teaching, this direct analytical approach, is just stunning. The original text actually concludes by saying that as the Buddha finished speaking, the minds of 60 monks who were there listening were completely freed from all attachments, right then and there. Which really leaves us with a final, profound question to think about in our own lives. If you are not your body, not your feelings, not your thoughts, what are you? Or maybe the more important question is, what kind of freedom becomes possible when you just stop clinging to all of it as being who you are?